Welcome back, everyone. The prices of petrol may go up again. The price of premium motor spirits, also called petrol, is projected to rise as Dangote reviews its sales policy. In a notice, Dangote Refinery says it has temporarily halted the sale of petroleum products in Nigeria. The company said it would now sell refined petrol in dollars until the government resumes crude for Naira sale arrangements. The move has raised concerns that using dollars for transactions could increase pressure on the local currency, potentially causing inflation and affecting energy security. While this is going on, some filling stations have started stockpiling petrol in a bid to ensure they have enough to sell at a higher rate. Halts having projected that the price of petrol would go up soon as a result of the failure of the federal government to continue the sale of crude oil to the Dangote Refinery in the local currency. Consequently, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, had threatened to sell petrol in dollars if the Dangote Refinery begins selling its product in foreign currency. Joining me tonight to speak on this very important issue is Dr. Vincent Mwane, who is an economist and investment specialist, who joins me live in the studio, and Omoriyi Edogiawere, a startup business lawyer. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us on the program tonight. Good evening, sir. Mr. Omoriyi, can you hear me? Good evening to you.
Loud and clear, I can. Good evening.
Good evening. Let me start with you, Dr. Vincent. This is not the kind of news to expect at this time, because the Naira for crude decision was expected to bring an end to the opaque 20-year-old domestic crude allocation scheme. What has been the impact of this policy?
The impact is quite mixed and disproportional.
Mixed and disproportional.
Yeah, in the sense that the few gains we're beginning to see around macroeconomic stability over the last few months will be threatened, and if we're not careful, it will be lost. In your intro statement, you clearly anticipate that prices will rise. The price of pump prices, fuel pump price, and the filling station will rise.
That's what your colleagues have been saying.
Exactly, and the effect of this in our economy as far as inflation is concerned, and the prices of goods and services. That is very basic, and that will happen. And it's already happening in outside Lagos. But my first major worry and concern is the investor confidence impact. Recently I was in an international investment meeting, and the proposal was, let's watch and see what will happen between federal government and Dangote. Dangote. These are the guys that want to invest some money in the country. Which is real investment. So the investor confidence will likely be impacted if this happens. And the quick issue is that the gains we've seen in the stability of FX, in the moderation of inflation over the last just 2-3 months will likely be threatened and be lost. And again, this is not so good for the Nigerian people who have beared a lot of burden from the reforms we've seen over the last 18 months, getting to 2 years now since this administration come to power. So this is going to be an added pressure, to the citizen, and it's not good for the country. By the time new investors are coming, they will be asking what happened to the almighty Dangote and whatever. So I think this is a platform for us to call NNPC very quickly to see how to resume the Naira crude deal they have with Dangote in a way that it will benefit Nigerians. Since 2016, when the project, the Dangote refinery project came on board, we were given a lot of promises. Once we do this, everybody will stop importing. FX reserve will rise. It will, and they are good on paper. Now let's get it done. Let's get it done. This story around Dangote issue with NNPC is not helping. It's not helping the investors in Nigeria, and it's not helping Nigerian image and ease of doing business outside the country.
We'll get there in the course of this conversation, but what you've said in clear terms is that if this arrangement is not renewed, the Nigerian consumers will be the biggest losers. Exactly. Is that what you've established tonight?
Exactly. And my concern here is that the crude we're selling to Dangote in Naira, as much as I know, of course, I'm not an oil and gas expert, but I know that when you sell domestic crude to a domestic refinery, it doesn't count on your OPEC quota. So why can't we? What was the problem? So what we're selling to Dangote doesn't like even reduce exactly the FX we're expecting, and it doesn't do anything against the budget and budget benchmark, whether it is on the prices or the quantity projected that we're going to produce, for the international market. So Nigerians are concerned about exactly what is going on. Unfortunately, none of the two parties have actually come out to Nigerians to actually give us the details of what this agreement is and what the disagreement is all about.
All right, Mr. Murray, let me bring you into this conversation, and I'd like to take you back to when this decision was made. And I remember Aliko Dangote himself commended the president for the positive impact of the Naira for crude swap deal on the Nigerian economy. How is it possible that we're now going back to what we thought never did us any good? What must have caused this, backtracking? Why does it look like the agreement may fail? And if it is not renewed, what is the implication of this for Nigeria and Nigerians?
I will start by answering the last question. More suffering for Nigerians, more expensive products. Already we can see that some petroleum products sellers are beginning to stockpile for the purposes of hoarding in anticipation of whatever increase that will come from this stalemate. So, like Dr. Wani has said, Nigerians will be the biggest losers if this fails. And this really puts a big hole on our ease of doing business index, because the world is watching. We celebrated in Naira for crude arrangements, and government appears to be missing his own side of the bargain. Right? Dangote has done what he had promised to do, but governments on their own end have not met their own part of the bargain. And it's quite simple. You cannot sell end products to retailers in Naira and pay for the primary product in dollars. It just won't add up. Your numbers will get wrong. And while everyone continues to push Dangote to take certain decisions from a patriotic perspective, it's important to also realize that he's running a business. It's important to also realize that in running a business, profitability is very key, right? So I think that the parties should go back and sit down and work out whatever the issues are, think through this, and look at the end goal. What's going to happen is if Dangote begins Halts Naira sale of refined products, what will happen? Demand for FX will skyrocket. What will happen? There will be pressure on the Naira. What is the fallout of that? The fallout for that would be that our inflation rate will go up. At the last MPC meeting by CBN, it was very clear that inflation continues to be a major challenge that we battle with in this country. So we really cannot afford to, take 5 steps forward and then 8 steps backward. This is a big blow, and I think that before the 31st of March, the party should sit down and work out something. The ripple effect of this would be a lot more problematic to handle. And let's look at 2 things. The dollar plays a pivotal role in our business index because we are predominantly a consuming economy. We're always importing, we're always buying, and a lot of these importations are benchmarked on the dollar. Secondly, the price of fuel determines a lot of things, predominantly transportation and the cost of staple foods. What Dangote refinery has done in the last couple of months in slashing their prices is to assuage the pressure on Nigerians, pressure that have been brought by inflation, right? The reduction of those costs, and also, forging strong competition in the downstream market. But what would happen is that if this threat, or for want of better language, if the Dangote group decides to go back to dollar sale transactions, it will deal a big blow on everything that has happened. prices of petroleum products, the little stability that we have begun to see, and the impact on the economy and the impact on the simple cost of a cup of garri will change. And so we must look at this from that index. It is no longer fashionable to say, oh, things are going to get better. People must begin to see things getting better actively. And if we allow things like this happen, it affects the ease that we hope to happen.
But Mr. Mori, let me also come in from this perspective, because we've talked about how this deal benefited Nigeria and Nigerians. And bearing in mind that there are different stakeholders in that industry, the oil and gas industry, the energy sector, would you say that this crude for Naira deal benefited the industry in any way?
I don't think so. So what is the ultimate objective of a businessman? The ultimate objective is to serve the consuming markets and to bring profitability. Like I said some time ago, you see, our over-reliance on the dollar, right, has affected a lot of our business psyche. And our penchant for importation has really dealt a major blow on the Naira and on local currency transactions. And so that's why when it's serious business, people are talking dollars. But that's an anomaly, and it shouldn't be. And so we shouldn't even be talking about the dollar dominating conversations like this. And I'm even more concerned by the fact that the parties involved are not even giving a clear explanation as to why this is the case, as to why they have not met the Naira for crude obligation. This was a big issue, if you remember, Jumoke, right?
Yes.
The major issue that the president even had to wade in, had to call out the parties, and had to overrule and give instructions to the regulators to say, look, sell to Dangote in exchange for Naira. And that was a welcome development, because we are facing unprecedented inflation, right? And a lot of our currencies are going into extinction. And we cannot sit back and think that it's a joke.
All right.
How do you know healthy economies are where you have low currencies heavily in circulation? When was the last time you saw a 50 Naira note? When was the last time you saw a 20 Naira note? 200 Naira notes are even going out of circulation. It's 500, it's 1,000, and it's a very dangerous trend.
Just before I come back to the studio, Mr. Mori, allow me to come in there. And just before I come back to the studio, and in addition to all you have said, it's even more surprising that this decision was made in September. And I remember speaking to a lot of experts on this. And one other thing that stood out for me about the impact of this deal was the rationale behind it. You heard people talk about how such exclusive domestic allocation of crude oil would guarantee energy security. They talked about how this would delink refined petroleum product prices from volatility in exchange rates and international crude oil prices, and ensure adequate supplies of refined petroleum products in the country. And for someone like Zach Adedeji, who is the executive chairman of FIRS, his expectation was that the foreign exchange spent on petrol will be reduced to a maximum of $50 million per month. Did this whole conversation come to you as a surprise? And I'd like for you to respond to that after him.
Well, yes. Because for me, as it stands, it appears that everything we have built on and all the projections and the promise that has come with this arrangement seems to be falling like a pack of cards. So nobody will be happy. Nobody will be happy that we're going back to where we believe that we have gone from. But you see, I am one person who believes that you cannot make considerable progress if you do not go back and look at the issues that have led you to where you are in the first place. The challenge we have is that we have mortgaged a lot of our crude for facilities. I said this to you in 2024, at the beginning of 2024, when we were talking about the budget, and even early this year. If we don't have other staple items giving crude oil a run for their money, we will continue to be in situations like this, where crude oil is determining everything, is holding the economy and holding our transactions in a place where, no matter how uncomfortable it is, we are compelled to stay in that stifling environment. So we need to look at it, right? NNPC has obligations for the next more than a decade plus obligations that they must meet, leveraging on our crude oil deposits. And a lot of these obligations are in FX. So balancing those obligations is a challenge in itself. So we need to look at those issues and ask ourselves why we got into those situations in the first place. You see, we cannot fix economic issues in a siloed arrangement. There is a ripple effect. It's like wiring a house, right? There's a ripple effect, and there are issues that go from one level to the other. And what we seem to do is that we seem to look at issues in isolation. And I want to add dangerous isolation. If we don't look at the larger picture, we end up being in situations like this, where a lot of promise comes with a policy, a lot is put into it, and midway, implementation becomes an impossibility. And parties now are left to do what? Go back to what they had wanted not to go back to. Where does this leave people who want to invest in our economy?
Absolutely.
Where does this ease of doing business index? That's a challenge. And, and the president has done a lot going around the world to tell people Nigeria is open for business. You do not want people to believe.
All right, gentlemen. At this point, let's go on a break, and when we come back, we'll expand this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone.
Hello, TVC Communications, how can I help?
What makes TVC the right choice for my business?
Excellent question, sir. Let me share some exciting facts with you.
Start your day on TVC Entertainment with Wake Up Nigeria, a family and lifestyle show. Your view empowers women globally.
It's your view, let it count.
Entertainment Splash delivers the hottest celebrity trends. On TVC News, we keep you informed with breaking news and in-depth analysis of events shaping the world.
I will continue to speak the truth.
TVC News at 7 and TVC News at 10 p.m. delivers the most important stories of the day. Max FM, your hit music radio station, captivates listeners daily across Lagos and Abuja, making every commute more enjoyable. Adaba 88.9 FM is not left out, as it is the voice of Southwest. And on TVC Digital, we reach to million viewers daily. All together, pulls in over 17 million viewers daily. Contact us on 0707 272 8338 or marketing at tvccommunications.tv. Partner with TVC Communications today. Let's grow together.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us on the program tonight. We're examining the latest developments in the oil and gas sector as Dangote suspends sale of products in Naira. And I've been speaking with Dr. Vincent Nwani, an economist and investment specialist who is right here with me in the studio. And also Mr. Omori Edogiawari, a startup business lawyer, joins us virtually. Gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Let me continue with you, Dr. Vincent. The last question Mr. Omori asked is, how did we get here? And looking at the kind of crisis this may portend for the Nigerian consumers, if there was an agreement for 6 months, does it have to get to the 6th month before we start talking about a renegotiation or renewal of that agreement?
I'm even exceedingly worried about the 6 months or 2 months or 1 year. You know, when subsidy was removed, one of the basis of removing that subsidy is that everybody have behind their mind that soon Dangote refineries will be in operation. That was one of the basic confidence that all of us had. Like I said before, since 2016, 2018, all through the period, we were bearing the pain of Dangote building that refinery. You know, we've been always assured that once this is done, importation will stop or moderate. The over 35% of FS consumption will completely be freed. You know, FS consumption on fuel importation. You know, all of these promises were made. So I was thinking that before the fuel subsidy was even removed, a lot of work and background work was done to ensure that everything around the agreement of crude supply, you know, to the Dangote refinery is really smoothing out. You know, 6 months is quite short, you know, really very short. And until we see and appreciate the fact that fuel in Nigeria, lack of it is a national security issue. At the level of food security, at the level of energy security, and some other security issues. People are worried about that price of will rise, you know, pump price will rise, and it will have a spillover effect on virtually everything we have in Nigeria. What of the time wasting? But fuel will become scarce. We have to queue, and as we are queuing, houses are being burned, business areas are being burned because we are storing. You know, so these are some of the issues, and there are so many of these issues. You know, and like I've said before, Nigerians are worse hit in all of this. You asked a question before: did the industry benefit from Naira for crude deal? I don't think so. But Nigerians benefited.
Definitely.
Nigerians benefited from the point of a bit of calm in the macroeconomic environment. You know, inflation was moderating a bit, FX was moderating, reserve was also accruing, you know, almost hitting over $40 billion. No, these are some of the early gains.
Also, you know, fuel marketers apologize. Fuel marketers would naturally go and buy from Dangote are now left with no other decision than to go and source for dollars to buy from Dangote refinery. Or are there other unlimited alternatives for them?
The challenge is that even the Dangote refinery coming on board with the Naira for crude deal, and we've seen fuel price running down from 1,002 plus to 800, some, you know, 800 or 800 and something. Speaking to some industry experts, I was told that the industry, the loss recognized during this period of fuel coming down for some of the players is over 250 billion. And I say, how? I was told that some of the fuel they bought at higher price, they couldn't bring it into the market. So I don't know whether this little window they will have before all of these issues will be settled, will give them opportunity to bring back some of this old stock into the market and sell at the price they wanted to sell it. But we know that the crude for dollar, Naira for crude deal with between NNPC and Dangote, it's not favoring some of the players, especially marginal players that have tank farms without the retail outlets. These are some of the feedback I got from the industry.
And do you think they would do everything possible to frustrate?
Of course,
some of this
they will do everything, and I'm hesitating to mention that it looks like we are fighting vested interest, and that is the reason why.
I mean, you're not the first person saying this, so I wouldn't be surprised.
It looks like we are fighting the vested interest, because if it is about Nigeria and Nigerians, either at the level of macroeconomic stability, either at the level of welfare and progress and happiness of Nigeria and Nigerians, everybody knows that we are on a safe hand with this Naira for crude deal. So I believe that, again, the president and his team, I think the president is still the minister of petroleum as we speak. It's time for him to step in as a father of the nation now and save the economy.
All right. Mr. Mori, let me come to you. I mean, we all know that the Naira has experienced significant fluctuations over the years. I mean, driven by inflation and exchange rate instability. But DAPMAN has reacted to this development, and that's Depot and Petroleum Product Marketers Association of Nigeria. The association says if crude oil transactions are linked to the Naira, these issues will only worsen, potentially triggering capital flight and causing foreign investors to seek alternative markets. This would negatively impact Nigeria's economic growth. Talked about the stability or sustainability of the sector and the efficiency of the oil and gas value chain. This is what DAPMAN thinks about these policies. Are these exaggerated points?
They are not exaggerated points. And I don't think I have anything to add to that issue. It's quite clear. That's what it is. You see, we must understand that government is law. What government says must carry weight and effect. And if the government has agreed to do a Naira for crude arrangement, on the basis of that, a private sector practitioner has actively taken steps, then it is important that the government meets its end of the bargain. Listen, today if you drive out, you see the power of competition. One filling station is selling at 860 something, another is selling at 825, another is selling at 9 something. Competition. You have a bouquet of options and you choose where you want to get. What is happening? The competition that a free market, unregulated price approach was expected to bring to bear has come to bear. All that will be affected by reneging on this arrangement and Dangote rescinding its arrangement, because we will now be forced to benchmark the cost of petroleum products at the cost of the dollar. There's no subsidy anymore, rightly so. But then, like Dr. Wani had said, part of the expectation that made that pain possibly bearable was that a Dangote was around the corner. Now, if that Messiah around the corner is saying, I'm going to be like the crucifiers, it's a major problem that we must now begin to look at. And listen, leave the key players in the game, right? Who will bear the brunt of this decision? Dangote. You and I, who will be forced to now pay more for fuel, most likely. Business owners, all they do is once there is a seeming inflation, they increase their production, their cost to cover their production. The end user, the average civil servant who does not have a side hustle, ends up being overburdened by this increase. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to curtail inflation. And the conversations around this, we should look at the ultimate objective, which is curtailing inflation and the indices around it. You do not want fuel scarcity at this time. 2, you also do not want any further shake on our already very fragile food markets. I'm not looking at the big ticket items. Food, simple things are being affected by this. We're trying to stabilize the cost of staple foods. We're trying to stabilize the simple cost of running a business and cost of living. And then this issue that has helped us get thus far is looking as if it's not going to work. It's a challenge in itself, right? But you see, another issue is that we must begin to look at issues very clearly before we make obligations. And the president, at the time when he signed off and asked that the Naira for crude arrangement should be met, needs to speak up again, needs to call all the parties together and say, look, guys, let's have this conversation again. Let's look at the issues again.
So what should the conversation be about?
Why are you not able to meet your obligations? You see, NNPC is silent. And that's a problem in itself. Why are we not able to meet our obligation? why can't you sell Naira for crude? Because there are obligations, like I said to you. There's a 50-point-something billion dollar facility with Saudi Aramco for crude. There are different things that are all in the works.
All right.
Right? And you see, until we begin to give crude oil a run for our money, we will continue to use crude oil as the beautiful bride and the hen that lays the golden egg, meeting so many obligations. And at the end of the day, issues like this will continue to suffer.
And you know, to answer that, Mr. Mori, the basis of this conversation is for the federal government to know that Nigerians cannot, poor Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians cannot continue to bear the brunt of some of these decisions. But again, is the federal government between the devil and the deep blue sea? I mean, if on one hand we say Naira for crude guarantees energy security, de-link refined petroleum product prices from volatility in exchange rates. On the other hand, we have some oil and gas experts who have said we must ditch this because failure to align with this with international standard could isolate Nigeria from global markets, diminish trade opportunities, and discourage investment inflows. Please, Mr. Mori, I'll come back to you. Please let Dr. Wani react to that.
I don't think Nigeria is in any deep blue sea and between deep blue sea and the devil at all. You know, once we eliminate the vested interest from wherever it is, everybody will be fine and very quickly at that. You know, like I said before, the crude you allocate to local refinery, be it Dangote or any other refinery, doesn't account in the OPEC quota. That is even an immediate gain for us. So the solution would have been to trigger increased production of crude and eliminate anything that looks like it will affect the increased production of crude. And we know what they are: insecurity. Unfortunately, pipeline bombing is almost trying to resume in the Niger Delta. So these are the places the federal government need to look at. You know, yes, Nigeria have a lot of obligation to meet using crude. The former administration led by General Muhammad Buhari entered into a lot of crude where we need to be supplying crude, I think 100 and something million barrels per day for some obligation over the last 5 years, which was a deal that some of us really were not happy at the point. But it's a deal, and it's a deal we need to meet that. But the survival of Nigerians is crucial at this point. The citizens and businesses have been hit left, right, and center over the last few months. In fact, the last one is 50% increase of telecom services, be it data and voice, hit on Nigerians. We have the band 1 or band A, band B of electricity, you know, increasing electricity price by as much as 200 and something percent, depending on the band you find yourself. And over that band want to go to band A now. We are dealing with that. Even the POS charges, Nigeria now buy their own money. POS charge increased by 100% over the last 1 year. You can count and count and count and count and count. You know, so it is still the same citizens. And you know what? Businesses that have made decisions based on the fact that Dangote fuel is selling, you know, the crude for Naira deal, and they've seen that currency will be stabilized, exchange rate will be stabilized, and inflation will be stabilized, will be impacted. A lot of some of these businesses have already made stock or made decision up until the end of December. Businesses take risks, but uncertainty is what this situation is going to throw in, and business doesn't thrive under uncertainty. And we're going to go back to a point where, like what happened in 2024, where a lot of businesses, big businesses, multinationals were leaving or downsizing. The ones that are here that are supposed to pay tax to IFRS were declaring losses. So over 40% of expected tax income from CAT, company income tax, were lost because companies that are supposed to pay were making what? Losses. They retrench. The workers, they couldn't pay salary, and workers have to either leave or take pay cut. That also affect pay that government need to accrue at the state level. So all of this again is the government that will bear the brunt. government will save itself. Yeah, they will bear the brunt. Insecurity will likely increase. Okay. You know, the Nigerian rating and ranking in international market, and all of this come and invest in Nigeria will be a smooth screen, because investors doesn't want to listen to what you're saying. They want to see what you are doing and what you have done. So
is it also okay to say that with these recent developments, we may be back to when we were importing petrol? That's
exactly what it is. What's the alternative? NNPC is bent to importing. You know, you find a situation where almost NNPC is almost competing, you know, with operators such as Dangote in the market. So that's where we are going, and to whose benefit? Apart from buying the crude at the international level, you are going to pay for the freight. You are going to pay for the loading, for the offloading, for the shipping. A lot of cost. Right. And you know what? All of the value chain, the loading, offloading, the shipping, all of Nigerians are not in that value chain. We're not in that value chain. So who are we serving?
Absolutely.
And that is why we talk about vested interests. And the president and the presidency have the power to deal with these vested interests in less than 48 hours. And we move forward.
All right, Mr. Murray, let me come to you. I mean, all of this, while we await the final analysis and takeoff of this new development, how do we prevent hoarding? I mean, we started seeing queues, anxious Nigerians, not forgetting that at different times the federal government had threatened to withdraw fuel marketers' licensing over hoarding. We know these things happen without consequences, and we know if it does now, it won't be the first time. So how do we prevent these marketers from hoarding this product? Or do we just expect this? Because, I mean, this is Nigeria.
Things that are beyond the purview of the regulator. It is typical classic Nigerian behavior to store once there's a slight threat to any challenge. So we expect Nigerians to stockpile. We expect petroleum products marketers to begin to hoard. Now, what should now happen is that the regulator must now get on its seat and move around to ensure that this hoarding is curtailed. They have measures in place to check these petrol stations to be sure that they are not stockpiling. There is data, and I like to always work with data. The data will show how many of them are lifting and what our daily consumption rates are. And if you find that we're selling, retailers are taking more than what we are consuming daily, and that consumption rate is not reflecting, the numbers will show, and that will be tracked. That's one way. One of the biggest challenges we've had in this country, and I've said this many times, is lack of consequences. People act arbitrarily, and nothing is really done to curtail their behavior. So we've got to tidy that up now, right? But I really do hope that, you see, one thing that can reduce hoarding is communication. You see, people take impulsive action because they don't even understand what's going on. So let me just keep as much as I can, pending when I know what is happening. All right. And so if NNPC comes out to say, hey guys, this is why we cannot meet this obligation. These are the things we can do. This is the balance we need to make. And Dangote comes out to say, this is the implication of reverting to dollar sale of petroleum products to retailers. And NNPC says, okay, this is the buffer we can provide pending when this is done. You and I, who will sit back and watch and make sense of this information, can now decide how we want to adjust our belts, how we want to relate to this, and how we want to work around it. Let us not be oblivious of the fact that subsidy is gone.
All right, Mr. Murray.
And any conversation around subsidy at this time would be crying over spilt milk.
Absolutely. So because of our time, in 1 minute,
of this is that we cannot even afford any palliative right now.
All right.
The best palliative we can get is to have structured arrangements in place that can clearly help Nigerians and businesses thrive meaningfully and sustainably.
All right. So my last question to you would be, what does this do to the reputation of the Nigerian government, especially at the time the president is very particular about bringing in more foreign investment I mean, if you could do business with your local investor and everything is looking messed up, what dent does this put on the image of the country?
Charity begins at home. You know a man from how he treats his family members, right? A man who shouts at his wife will shout at you. It's that simple. And the implication of that is that if you see a government not meeting its end of the conversation, as a businessman who is on the outside, it tells you how to equip yourself to prepare for that conversation. And let me tell you this, and I've said this many times to you, so you guys know I'm like preaching to the choir. Nigeria is a fantastic destination to do business. We've got the numbers. We are the largest black market in the world. And we're a consuming market. So we're an investor's delight.
All right, Mr. Mori.
Will that investor deal with you with a long fork?
All right.
Or deal with you?
All right, Mr. Mori, thank you for that. Dr. Mani, your last take on this. Where do we go from here in 30 seconds? Okay,
where we go from here is that we need to restore investor confidence. You know, charity begins at home, just like my colleague have said. You know, the investor want to see that government can keep their own side of the deal. Our reputation in international market is already as battered as you can think of, whether it is insecurity or whatever parameters. This is a way to rescue, you know, this reputation by ensuring that the largest refinery in Africa and the 6th largest refinery in the world works in Nigeria and serve its people.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for insight on the program tonight. Dr. Vincent Nwan, economist and investment specialist, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Mori Edogawari, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. I'll see you again tomorrow.